Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Mike Ames Recruitment Show, where we have an excellent episode. We're going to talk about something that I feel like is going to be super close to people's hearts next year, which is how to max out the fees that you get from clients. Now, joining me today, I have the magnificent Mike Ames. How you doing, Mike?
If I was any better, I'd be twins. Not good.
It's a classic. And we're joined, obviously, by Michelle. Hi, Michelle. Welcome today.
Hi, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Thanks for coming on the show. Now, we'd spoken a few times, but we met recently at a team event, didn't we,
Yes.
I think?
Yeah.
And we were talking about fees, and you were telling me some of the transitions you made in your business from being like contingent jobbing around to get what you want to now as a solopreneur recruiter. So you are not search, you're just a recruiter. I don't mean just a recruiter, but you are a recruiter, solopreneur. You're 100% retained, and your average fee, I think, is 20%. You charge anywhere between 20 25, but most of the fees are coming in at around about 20%. You're also a regional director of the team group, Simon Bliss's outfit. If you're a recruiter and you're not a member, worth having a look at that. Anyway, so I wanted Michelle to come on the show to talk about that, because I think that quite a few people would be interested to kind of hear that journey. How did you do that? Particularly with what I know was going to happen next year. Well, do I know? Does anyone know? I think demand and supply are going to level out a little bit next year. How far, I don't know, but I think they are, which means that you've got to be super, super on your negotiation point, because if you're not, the clients will run all over you. So not much of a challenge for today. I'm not trying to big you up too much, Michelle, but that's the challenge. Yeah, there you go. You're the woman for the job. So that's why I wanted you to come on today's show, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Me too. Thank you.
Well, saying that, shall we kick off? Now, I've got a sort of question that I want to ask first, which is, why is it, as recruiters, do you think, Michelle, that there are so many challenges around fees, particularly around keeping fees high?
Well, I think as a sector, we don't have a brilliant reputation a lot of the time. And, it's the things that people are concerned about as the lack of personal contact, the lack of relationship, stability with consultants, perhaps leaving roles. And, the client's taken time to build a relationship, the candidate also, and somebody that consultant, I should say, is off going to another company. So you don't have that stability that they're looking for. They're putting their trust in you. It's the whole trusted advisor thing. And if your advisor that you've spent that time building up that connection with suddenly moves on, you're stuck. And it's quite a commoditized sector, I think, in that way. So I think we struggle and have always struggled with fees. Clients tend to come to the conversation expecting whatever your fees are to be discounted. And so that can prove a challenge for us. It's kind of they just come into it with that expectation. I'm unsure why, because a lot of the clients start off the conversation with, we don't, we hold our ground on what we charge and we don't discount. And by the way, how much of a discount are you going to give me? So it can be a challenging conversation.
It's interesting you say that, actually, because one of the things that will come out a little later is this concept of productization. And in this country, as Brits, we don't tend to negotiate a price on a product. You don't get in the supermarket and get a jar of coffee and say, no, it's got £3 on it, but will you take £2.50 for cash?
Exactly. There's no haggling.
No, it's £3. So that's what it says. So it's kind of what you have to pay. Yeah. And I think one of the benefits of productization, especially if you've got less experienced staff, is when you present it, it is a fait accompli. We don't negotiate. That's the price. So if you want that, then that's what it cost. Yeah. And I know it's only a small negotiating point, weirdly, and we're not talking about productization in detail today, but I know it's only a small point. But in my experience of doing it, and also of training other people to do it, just that, well, that's the product, that's the price, that's what you get, paid or not, really. And the client's like, well, okay, then I'll pay that then. And it's amazing. People don't believe that's going to happen. It's the most amazing thing to watch, but that's the deal.
It is an interesting one. And somebody said to me the other day, well, can you not do it any cheaper? And I said, no. Didn't say anything else.
The power of the silent. I love it.
I was in the back of a taxi heading to the train station and I just went quiet. And there was a bit of silence, and then the client said, "Fair enough. If you don't ask, you don't get. So I thought I better ask." And I was like,
Can I just say that? Can I dive in on that point there? I think you've just summed the whole. In fact, we can finish now. Really, if you don't ask, you don't get. Right? That's a lot of clients just trying it on. I mean, I think next year will be a little different, because what's going to happen, almost certainly, if this downturn is the same as the others I've worked through, is you get pressure from right at the top of a business, particularly bigger businesses, got to cut costs by 10%.
Yeah.
And so that's the deal. You know, I'd love to work with you. You're my favorite agency. You're brilliant at what you do, but I cannot do it at that rate anymore. Yeah. And then obviously you have to be quite brave, because you've got to say, well, okay, I'm going to move on. And there comes a point where everybody's saying it. So you have to think about that. But I think in the past, particularly, you're right. It's a bit of a punt and see what I can get.
Yeah.
And if you stand your ground.
You want to, don't you? You want to turn around and go, I managed to get them down on the price. Great. Yeah. But that doesn't mean you have to come down on the price.
No.
I think that's a really powerful point, and sort of linked to clients, I suppose, is we've said that they kind of sometimes have a punt. Are there different types of clients though? Like, what is it that they want from you as a recruiter? And do you think it's the same for everybody, or do you think there are different sort of pockets of clients on that?
I would say different pockets of clients, most definitely. I think you have the clients who, for them, it's very transactional. They just want you to go away and find the candidate, fill the job for them, and they want to focus on other things. That's not necessarily a relationship that I particularly enjoy or I'm looking to attract. There are other clients who want to get to know you, to understand where you've come from, how you're going to recruit for them, and how you're going to represent them in the marketplace. So those clients want more of the trusted advisor, more of the relationship with you, so that they can really have a conversation with you throughout the process, not just at the beginning. But if there's an understanding and a connection, then when you're taking them through the process, it's like that arm around them, isn't it? It's walking them through and saying, well, in my opinion, this is the strongest candidate. However, these are the ones you should consider on this basis. And that connection's been made. They're more likely to listen to your advice, and you can help them to reach a decision. There's been situations where I've said to a client, I don't agree with your choice, and this is why. But I think that's a powerful thing, because you are building that trust, and you're saying to a client, I really want what's right for your business. I don't want this person to not be the right person, to fall out of the role, to not be happy. It's got to be a good career move for the individual. So it's a two-way thing for both parties. But you're there as the middleman to say, let's make this as easy as possible, as informative as possible, so that you all feel you've made the right decision on both sides.
I think that's an interesting point worth unpacking, actually, because we all know about client avatars or ideal client profiles or whatever, where we describe the client that we want to deal with. And in many cases, the avatars describe more specific things about them, like their job title and the size of company that they work for, and how many hires they have, etc. And that's all terribly relevant stuff, particularly the number of hires. But I think a softer criterion within that avatar has to be how they see agencies.
Yeah.
And of course, you never know until you start to engage with them, unless you're prepared to hear what other people say about them, of course. But you really have to engage with them yourself. But I know for a fact that there were some clients when I was in recruitment all the time who I would have walked over broken glass for.
Yeah.
And I like to think, whilst they wouldn't have walked over broken glass for me, I wasn't that special. They would put themselves out for me. They saw me.
They give you a plaster at the end.
Yes, and maybe a gin and tonic, but it's the term is in the circle. That's the term they all use. So you're in the circle with them. And it's funny because when I started in recruitment in 88, my job for the first 3 months was cold calling. And my boss says, we don't cold call really, but it's a good way to learn your profession and to understand. Okay. He said, by the way, if anybody says to you, oh no, we've already got agencies and we're very happy with them, just make a note of those. And I said, well, why would I do that? He said, because they're the people who we want as clients.
They're your targets.
Yeah, and it was weird because it was counterintuitive. Well, surely we want the people that will give us work. No, because they'll give anybody work. Right? Yeah. They've got no loyalty to their suppliers. And this is this dream that once they get me, though, that's it then, they'll never use anybody else. Dream on, mate. It's in their nature to do that, right? So what we want are the people who are saying no. Then all we have to do is focus on getting in the circle with them.
Yeah.
And then we are protected by the same loyalty that client has. And I think it's really important to carefully assess the people that you deal with and understand whether A, they're the kind of requirements that you want to work on, B, what they want to pay is what you want to be paid, obviously.
Sure.
They value you, they'll work with you inside the circle. And lastly, for me personally, they have repeat hires. There's a certain minimum fee per year that I like to look at to make it worthwhile. If they've got ticks in those boxes, mate, I'm all over them like a cheap suit. So I think, I agree with you. I think there are different client groups. The problem is, again, getting back to the fees, which is the whole point of this, is many people just go for the client and I'll get it. They're never going to do well with those kind of people, are they?
Yeah, I mean, I make a joke of it when I talk to people about what I do, and I say, I quite like to choose who I work with. Years ago when I worked in corporate, I didn't have that opportunity. I couldn't negotiate on the fees the way I wanted to. They were quite set in stone. And it was quite controlled about which clients I would get to deal with. Whereas I like to work with people who are like-minded. I like to have people invested in the process like I'm invested in the process, because then you're more likely to get to a successful conclusion. It's a mutual business relationship where you're working towards the end goal. And like you said, you would have walked over cut glass for those people and they probably knew it. And it's not a case of, okay, which agencies do you use? It's a case of, well, I want someone to go, right, we have a need, I'm going to ring Michelle. That's all I want. That trust, that bond, that she'll be able to help me. And you've got to earn your stripes to get to that point, of course. But I think it's really important.
Nobody gets invited into the circle. You have to climb the wall. You
slay the dragons.
Work hard to prove that you are worthy of being in the circle. But when you are in the circle, it makes the whole process, particularly in negotiation, easier, because they know what they're going to get for their money. And Absolutely. So they're more likely to pay it. I mean, obviously, everybody comes back occasionally and says, oh, well, can you do it for less? Or we'll get this a lot next year. It's out of my hands. Purchasing, you've just told me, or finance directors just said, you'll get that a lot next year. And then you have to decide what you do about that. But I think at least they know what they're going to get. They're paying for quality service and they get a quality service.
I will quickly say, actually, I do find that what works for me is the client expectation tends to be low. And so if you can go in and show, I mean, there's a lot of competition out there, but quite a lot of them make us look good, don't they? If you do it right, great, because then you've got a chance to show a client why they're paying what they're paying, why they're using you, and what they're getting. Are they getting value for money? Because no one's ever turned around to me at the end and said, well, you were far too expensive, I wasn't happy. I paid the bill, but begrudgingly.
Yeah.
No, I said that.
So on that I do want to move on in a second, because I want to, but we've got a couple of comments. We've got one from Karen who says that she wholeheartedly agrees with you. So it's I think there are a lot of like-minded people out there like Michelle. Martin's got an interesting point, which is that the perception is that all recruiters do is post an advert, filter, and then fire over some CVs. People don't understand just how much as a recruiter you actually do.
Can we hold that thought, Martin?
I know, I want to come to that in a second, because I know that there are people watching this who are thinking, oh, Michelle, I want to have 20 to 25% fees. I want to have 100% retained. I'm a solopreneur. How can I do this? And, this shows we like it to be as practical as we can be. So can we talk about sort of what things people can do in order to get to a similar position to what you are now?
Yeah, I think you have to make a decision. Okay, if I'm going to move away from contingency, am I going to move away entirely? You need to decide your price point and you need to understand your own offering. You need to go to the client and say, this is what I do. This is how much it costs. There's none of that shying away and having the pricing conversation at the end of the conversation. There's no point. Have it up front, because you'll save yourself a whole lot of time. And I think people just appreciate that candor. You go in and you say, let's talk about the sensitive bit first, and we can do all the rest. You do the sell, you tell them who you are, you tell them why you do it, you tell them about your experience, and you're laying out the carpet for why you are charging what you're charging. But then you need to get in and tell them what that is. so many conversations I've got to the end and the client hasn't even asked, and then you think, oh, it's getting, you know, when I was in my early days of recruitment, it's getting more of a sensitive feeling. You're getting worried about that conversation coming up because you know they're going to argue with you. So I think it's really good to just lay it out there. I do think once you've decided what your price point is, you need to stand behind it. You really need to, it's not about justifying it. It's being able to say, well, this is what you'll get for that. You don't have to justify your price point. You just have to explain it. The client will decide whether they want to work with you or not.
You do have to believe in your price point, though, don't you? I mean, you do have to believe it, because...
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And not be moved from it, because people will push you. Of course they will. And you have to be ready for that conversation. There's no point being sensitive about it. It is what it is.
On that, we train people in this, right? And this is a really key area. Well, I say train, it's part of our system.
Yeah.
And I think that they don't actually believe it. So if you build a product, which is the best way to do this, you build a product and say, well, okay, products are just encapsulation processes, right? You do it in 2 or 3 hours, and you've encapsulated the key bits of information, what you do, why you're different, and proof that what you say is what you do, which are the 3 main things you need, right? But I get the impression they don't really believe it. It's like, I've written that, but I don't believe it. Well, it won't work then, will it? Because if you don't believe it, then they won't buy into it. And if they don't buy into it, they don't buy into you. And that's a really key thing. So you really have to believe what you're selling, don't you?
Absolutely. And this goes to the client point of, if I don't believe in what the client's all about, I'm not going to be able to, because I'm not there to convince a candidate to go for the job. I'm there to tell them what the role is, who the business are, what they're all about. And then I'm there to say, is that right for you? And I think clients often think you just have to go out, attract candidates to the job, and then persuade them to come to the table. And I don't believe that. And so I think that's an important thing to convey to clients is, I'm there to understand the candidate's career motivations, what they want out of their next role. And sometimes you say, do you know what, this isn't for you, because everything you've told me isn't what the client is offering. Quite often candidates will say, oh, well, I'd like to be put forward anyway. And you think, well, actually, no, it's just not a fit. I think this is the thing, recruitment consultant. I've always believed in the word consultant. You have to be consultative. You have to listen. You have to advise to the best of your ability. Sometimes it doesn't go your way. Sometimes it does. I think when you're retained, you have a vested interest in getting that across the line. And so does the client. When you're contingency, they don't have that investment.
And you have to cover your ground, don't you, in contingent? Because if you don't put that person forward, maybe the next agent will. And even though they're the wrong person for the job and you know it, they then get the job. And then, of course, 6 months down the line, you're looking again for them. But I think you're right. In fact, it's funny you should say that, because my very first day in recruitment, all those years ago, the MD had us all in, and he said, you're a professional advisor, just like lawyers and accountants.
Yeah.
He said the operative word is consultant. That's exactly what he said. And it's amazing, really, because I'd never really thought of it like that. My view was like Martin Drake's. I'll tell you what, we'll just run a few adverts, go and see a few people, take people for lunch, and then make loads of money. Well, look, if it's that easy, you do it, because it's nowhere near that easy, is it?
I think the only people who think that are people who've never worked in recruitment. Honestly, I think, but I think basically, I think a nice way to summarize is you guys are offering a bigger service, and that's why you deserve the bigger fee. So having that sort of backup of your price point is so important with the client. So we've got somebody here, a comment from Paul, which is he lost 120,000 fee last month as someone else was prepared to do it for 60. It's a shame, but it's interesting to see somebody doing a big project for so little. What do you think about that? People coming in and undercutting. Do you think that they've actually done a good person for it? Do you think they'll come back to Paul in 6 months and be like, oh, the person we had actually wasn't great? What do you think will happen there?
I have had so many clients come back to me because, same as Paul, I've been in a position where someone's come in cheaper, or they're going to do it on a contingency basis. And that client said, can you do it any cheaper? Will you change the way you work? And I've said no and no. And they've said, fair enough. And it hurts. It's worrying. Your heart flutters and you think, should I be walking away from this? But yes, you absolutely should be. Because if they can go and fill it like that, I mean, I normally say to clients, I understand completely where you're coming from. Good luck with that process. I really hope it works out for you. And if it doesn't, you know where I am. You know what my terms are. You know where I am. So often they come back to you. I don't think that the person who has slashed their prices is putting as much effort in, because why would you put that effort in if you're not going to make the fee? I mean, Paul, I'm sure would have. Sorry.
No, I was just clearing your throat.
Yeah, I think Paul would have put a huge amount of work into that and taken that candidate who was successful through that process. You don't then cut off all your contact when the candidate starts. You're still invested. You're still talking to the client, talking to the candidate, ensuring that it is what you told them it was. I don't believe that the person who slashed their prices is doing all of that. So that's when people fall out of roles. It's when we have to pay rebates.
I was going to ask you about that. You don't have to answer this. You can take the fifth. But I'm betting you get very few counter offers and blowouts.
Very few. I've covered it all up in the process because if I found them what they're looking for and I believe it is the right move for them, then I'm helping them along the way. That said, I've turned to candidates and said, we're all the way at the end of the process. You could get offered any day. Are you sure? Is this what you're looking for? I don't feel I'm jeopardizing my fee. I feel I'm cementing it at that point, because if it's not right, they're going to leave anyway. And in the same way, I've said to a client, I've had a client make an offer and then the candidate said something that's really worried me, really concerned me. And I've gone straight to the client and said, look, we need to talk about this. And in that particular instance, it was a historic client and I advised him to withdraw the offer. And there's complicated reasons as to why, so which I won't go into now, but for me, it was the best advice for the client. And I thought the candidate was just playing people off. But like I say, I've done that from both sides, and walking away sometimes is walking away from the business entirely. Sometimes walking away is walking away from a potential fee because you know it's not right. So you have to say, maybe not walking away, but ending the process by going, do you know, this isn't right. This isn't going to work out. And I know that 25 years of experience tells me when something is right. And I think you have got to, they're paying you for that. They've hopefully paid you that retainer up front. And yes, you want that final proportion of the fee, but it has to be for the right reasons. And it has to be the right placement. So I'm quite sort of, I don't know what the word is, but I'm conscientious.
The big picture, I think, as well. Like your relationship.
Professional, really.
Professional, there you go. Conscientious, professional.
No, that word is bandied around a lot, isn't it? But actually, what you've just described to me when I was listening to you, the word that kept popping into my head was professional. You're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
That's what you must do, is the right thing. And you know what sits behind all of this? The biggest problem we all have, it's that tyranny of the targets. You know, it's that, but it is really, it's the end of the month.
Yeah, it's so right.
If you're a solopreneur, so if you don't hit your monthly targets, no one's going to sack you or shout at you. It's like, well, I'll try a bit harder next time.
No one's going to pay me either.
No one's going to pay you, that's true. But you still do the right thing.
Yeah. Oh, most definitely.
If you're working for a company to say, well, I know it's in the 11th hour, but I pulled the plug on it because I don't think they were right. A lot of sales managers are not really going to go with that. So you should have put them in. You know, that's 50 grand fee or 20 grand fee or something. You've lost that now. So I think if you're a solopreneur listening to this, your choices are a lot easier.
Most definitely. Yeah. And I think it is difficult. Like I say, having worked in corporate, I understand entirely what it's like when there's an expectation. But the fact of the matter is, if you're going to get paid bonus on a placement, do you want to have to pay it back 2 months later because it's not going to work out? That's a really painful position to be in.
And lose a little bit of your reputation, even though it's not my fault.
Yeah.
Well, they hold you responsible, and to a certain extent, it was your fault because you knew it was going to happen.
Yeah, and moving forward, relationships are key. It's only going to get tougher, and it's about those relationships. It's not about having 100 clients. It's about having 20 of the right clients who give you repeat business, loyalty. Yeah. I mean, my first ever client from my first ever cold call, I'm still working with now, 25 years on. He's just told me he's retiring, which is very selfish. And I called him up on it.
Does he not thought about you at all?
No, not at all. Haven't even come into it. It's so rude. But that relationship is one of my most prized relationships. I mean, don't get me wrong. He calls me and says, "I haven't got a job spec. Can you fill this for me?"
But he didn't do that the first time he used you, though. I bet.
No, he didn't.
I bet what happens is we used to get I used to get phone calls saying, so-and-so, Fred blogs, yeah, send me 2 of them. Oh, okay. All right then.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I'll do that then. But I think you're well and truly in the circle then. You've earned your place in the circle.
Sure.
You have a wealth of knowledge and experience of the client site because you're selling the client as much as you're selling the role.
Yeah.
We did some research.
I mean, I'll grumble about it, but I'll also tell the candidate he didn't even write me a job description.
Yeah.
Because I know what the business is like, and I know what he's like to work with, da-da-da. So
you just made a point there, and I know we're going to have to wind up soon, but to know what the business is about, I think if you're going to justify your fees, you're not only going to justify all the work that you're going to do to earn those fees and how you separate yourself out from the competition who don't do that work, and then provide proof that what you're telling them is true. By the way, video testimonials, 5 times more likely to be believed than written testimonials. So get some vid testimonials. Anyway, but if they know why you're different and they know that what you're telling them is the truth, they're much more likely to give you the fee that you want if they can see that difference is substantial and beneficial to that. And part of that, as we were talking about off air, was an understanding of the client as much as the role, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. If you don't get under the skin of the client, how can you go out there and effectively be their brand ambassador? How can you go out there and be their person on the street, finding the talent that they're looking for that they can't find themselves because they either haven't got the time, haven't got the reach, or the experience and knowledge that we have in our sector? And that's where, again, we stand by our fee, pulling it back round. This is why we do it. But candidates, for me, if they come out of an interview and go, it was exactly as you said it was, and I'm really surprised by that, I think brilliant, great, because I did a good job of telling you what to expect and you got that. And they hopefully were exactly everything I promised that they would be. So it's that thing of not over-promising, but knowing enough about the client, understanding what they're all about and what that candidate's walking into. So the interview, you're taking a bit of the fear factor out of the interview and out of the process. You say, look, let me tell you, warts and all, this is what they're like. And that's really important to me. That poor client doesn't get off the phone till I feel I really understand what the culture.
Well, if you don't like the company, you ain't going to like the job at the company. I'll tell you that now.
Absolutely. So, yeah.
100%. Okay, I think we're about at the time where it's time for me to do my favorite bit, which is the summary, really. And I think, Michelle, I mean, we've got a lot of people who are agreeing with you. Paul saying here, on average, it takes him 120 hours on a search. So he's not worried about losing work on price. He worries if he loses it on quality, which I think, again, is something that you really advocate. And Gavin has said it's not about an individual placement fee. It's about a long-term revenue with a client over many years. The only way of doing this is by offering a valuable service. And I think the key to what this is it's about backing up why you're asking for a higher fee and showing them that you aren't going to do what everybody else does, which you could do yourself. It's just this. You're going to make sure it's the right person. You're going to save time and money. Ultimately, you're going to help them in various aspects of the role and make sure it's right for them, not just right for you. You're going to hold your ground. You're going to have that walk away point. You're going to say, fine, if you don't want this, that's okay. I understand that. You're going to let them walk away and potentially come back. Because I feel like they might. And you're not going to be desperate. You're going to have this knowledge that you are great at what you're doing. You're a professional. You are a consultant. This is a career, not something that just makes a quick buck, which a lot of people think recruitment is. And I think, in my mind, that's the key point here is you're a professional. Yeah. And you should act like it.
I think so. And I think, for candidates and for clients, they are the same person. So your relationship's built with both and with everyone in the process, not just with the candidate who gets the job, but those other candidates who are in the process then go and get jobs elsewhere. And you've built that moment of trust with them for them to then come to you and say, okay, I need to recruit and I like the way that you dealt with me and I liked your honesty and I liked your professionalism. It's really important to me. I would rather not work with people that I don't feel that shared professionalism with. I'd rather walk away from all of those because it just doesn't make for a happy life and a successful recruitment record, really. And that's really important to me.
Yeah. Okay, so in a second, guys, I'm going to come to both Michelle and Mike and ask for the top tip, the thing that people should do if they want to sort of max out their revenues. But first, Mike, we are talking next week and we have an old favourite on the show next week. And that is Peter Ames. We have Peter
Ames, yeah. Right. Real networking is not what you think. It isn't going to events and talking small talk with people, nibbling cheese and drinking warm Chardonnay and coming away feeling faintly discredited and displeased by that. It's actually building up a network of people that help you build your empire. It's completely different, 100% different. So Pete's going to come on. He's our resident networking coach, real networking coach, and he's going to come and talk to us, certainly to talk about some of the bear traps that you can fall into in networking, real networking, and then give you 3 things that you can make a start with. And I'm telling you now, recruitment is not a great place for real networking because it's so transactional. So if you do it, you're going to stand out. So check it out next week.
Okay, fantastic. That's going to be a great show. And I'm looking forward to giving Pete a grilling. I like doing that. So hopefully other people will come and do it too. So, Michelle, I'm going to come to you first. People are watching this and they're thinking, right, I feel like there's been a lot of things, you know, that you've talked about today. Yeah. If they were to do one thing, if somebody was to do one thing to help max out their fees, what would you say it should be?
Decide your price point first. Stand by it. Know what your offering is and then take it to the client confidently, no concern about what it is, because when they question you on it, you need to know exactly where you're coming from, and you need to know how to present it well. And if that means taking that time to do that before you go out with a retained offering, then that's the way it should be. You can't go out there half-heartedly and then the client say, well, do you work on contingency as well? And you say, well, yeah, actually I do, because you're desperate for the business. You're just undermining yourself, and that's just no point in doing that. So definitely decide your price point.
Thank you. Mike, what would you say yours is?
Okay, mine is very similar to that, actually. It's to know your value and be able to explain it. See, we all know our value, at least we think we do, but you have to be able to articulate it in a way that the client thinks, yeah, okay, I'm getting more and I want what that extra is, so I'll pay more for it. If they don't understand why you want them to pay more, or the things that you tell them they don't really care about, then you're not going to charge any more. Let me tell you that. So you have to be able to articulate your value to then be able to make your price point. And then, as Michelle says, that's the price. That's it. If you don't want it, then what can I do?
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, guys, I think this has been a great show. We've got some thank yous coming in, so I think it's really made a connection. Michelle, I want to say thank you so much for coming here today and sharing with your knowledge with us. It's been fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you very much. And we'll see you next week, guys.
We will.
Thanks, bye.